Welcome to the Artist Work Ethic Podcast. I'm Mike Pelak. I'm a screenwriter and filmmaker who's always looking to maximize my time and potential as I work to break in. In this podcast, I talk to artists of all kinds who have seen success in their fields about their process, habits, and work ethic. Today on the show is Shane Told. Shane is the singer for the band Silverstein and the host of the podcast Lead Singer Syndrome. Silverstein has sold over 1 million records worldwide and have toured the world with bands such as Simple Plan, Rise Against, and Story of the Year. All right, Shane, thank you for coming on with me today.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So you've got Silverstein, who put out an album a little over a year ago. You've got a new single that's more recent. You're heading back out on tour in a few months. You've got the Lead Singer Syndrome podcast. You're definitely busy. How do you stay as productive as you are?
Well, I'll be honest, man. I'm not here to share any secrets because I'm the worst. I'm here to hopefully get some out of you, Mike. I thought it was hilarious you asked me. I am a busy person. I think productivity is more a weakness of mine than a strength. But I don't know. I mean, there's a few things I've picked up over the years that I try to stay organized, in some ways. But if you asked anyone that knows me, would you call Shane an organized person? They would say, hell no. So that's the honest truth, my friend.
Well, I think I told you quickly over email, don't sell yourself short. I think you've got a lot of stuff going on. And, I think most people, I think it for anyone to follow the creative goals and artistic, endeavors takes a certain motivation and a dedication to that, because it's a much harder path than jumping into some other job. And that's where I started this podcast, was to talk to people who, have made those leaps and persevered and fought through all that crap that most other people don't. That's kind of where I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm trying to dig up with this, is what are the things that I guess motivated you to push Silverstein all the way across the goal line to where you're still doing it, 20 plus years later?
Yeah. And it's really interesting, man. I think honestly, for me, it boils down to the fact that I really care about everything that I do. I really care about the band. I really care about the songs I write. I really care about the podcast that I have put out every week for over 5 years. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot of consistent work. I think that that's where it starts. And I think that for a lot of people, sure, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they don't feel particularly connected to their job or what they're really doing. So I think it starts there. If you ask me how many hours I work in a week, I would have no idea. I don't have an answer. I don't keep track of that. I don't think about that. It's like, hey, I got a job to do. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to structure my day around some things that I need to do on a particular day, on a particular deadline. And then the rest of the time is like time for me to watch TV. I love baseball. So I hope to watch 162 Blue Jays games every season. I don't get to them all, but I'd love to. So I'm not a workaholic. I don't particularly love spending hours editing or hours working on a vocal or something. I do it because I'm passionate about it. I want to do my best, and I care about how people, see my work. And I want, if people are taking the time to consume what I do, I think it's only right for me to take the time to perfect it.
I think to your point, I've always said that you don't need to sleep 4 hours a night to be productive, but being, like you said, consistency is really the key. If I'm working on a new script, I'm not the type who can sit down and spend 8 hours, across a Saturday trying to do something, but I can definitely take 40 minutes a day and just be consistent about it. And all of that time is going to add up. And I think that that applies for a band who's trying to launch their career, or, you know, an artist or anything. If you just spend a consistent block of time, that's going to add up over the long run and push you further ahead than someone who burns themselves out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that, and you know, we talk about TV again. The most popular television shows, they have a time every night of the, like, they're on whether it's Jeopardy on every night at 7:30 Monday through Friday, whether it's 90 Day Fiance that comes on at 8 p.m. on Sundays. I know because I watch these shows religiously. They have a schedule. People know to tune in. And I think that that's something you can take away is, okay, you know, whether it's, okay, every week on, you know, this time I'm going to have this like block of time booked with myself to be creative. I think having that consistency is important because so many times you're right. People will get, okay, I'm going to write an album or I'm going to write a screenplay, and they're going to just go, get burnt out, forget about it, take so much time away from it that they've kind of forgotten what they did, lost sight of it. Maybe now they've overthought it to where they think it isn't any good, and then they're back to square one. So, you know, keeping that consistent schedule is super important. It's important as a creative person, whether you're a musician or writing screenplays or whatever, to schedule, time to be creative. And it sounds weird because we grow up thinking creativity like, oh, the moment strikes, like all of a sudden, like I see something and I'm inspired and I need to go write a song. And the reality is, especially as you get older, there's a lot of shit going on. It's like, no, I have to say, okay, Wednesdays at 3:00, I sit down and I write every Wednesday. And okay, I can't get to it this Wednesday. All right, then Thursday, I'm going to get down and I'm going to spend that time writing. And that's going to be a consistent, you know, weekly thing that I do. And, you know, I think that that's a really good thing for creative people to remember or consider. And I think sometimes it gets a little bit lost by the wayside. But then after a while, if you don't do that, weeks, months have gone by and you haven't done anything creatively. And that can be, it can be hard to get back on that horse, you know?
Totally. How important would you say perseverance was to both Silverstein initially breaking in and even applying to your podcast? You know, you mentioned you've been doing it over 5 years. That definitely takes a perseverance to keep going to see any real progress there.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, making a commitment, saying yes to things before you really know how you're going to do them has been something that I've subscribed to, you know, like quite honestly, like, hey, it's a good opportunity. Okay, sure. Like I'm in. I agreed to do a podcast. I thought I might be pretty good at talking. Turns out I'm okay at it, but I agreed to do it pretty much without really knowing the ins and outs and really knowing all like how to do it at all. And I figured it out on the job. And a certain amount of that happened with Silverstein too. I mean, I think like the fact that Silverstein is 5 people and our drummer, if anyone, you should talk to anyone in my band, it's our drummer, because he's super on top of everything. He's also our manager. But you know, he would just constantly be like, okay, we did this, now we do this. We booked this show, now we booked this tour, now we do this. And like he can just consistently kept putting things on the books. There's never a break. There's never a time on the schedule where we didn't know what was next. And I think that was really important for persevering through some of the hard times, because especially at the beginning when we were first putting out our first album and going on tour, and like there were shows where 5 people would show up, and that can be very deflating and demotivating. But the fact that we said, all right, there's 5 today, there's 10 tomorrow, maybe. Okay, we're back down to 7. You know, you keep building over time, and I think the fact that we all didn't want to let each other down, I think was an important part of being in a band and kept us going as well. And you know, and that's why sometimes I say, like, you want to do something creative or start a new project, a lot of people say, okay, well, it's my thing. I want to do it. And if this blows up, I want 100% of the money. It's like, well, okay. But if you have another person working with you, pushing you that you can push and motivating each other, like, hey, we need to do this. We need to do this. So you're not letting that other person down as a partner for whatever your endeavor. I think that can be a really good thing too, to increase productivity.
Almost all arts are collaboration at some point, whether it's collaborating on the end product or collaborating along the way or collaborating in the marketing of it afterwards. I talked to Benny from Gaslight Anthem for a long time about collaboration, and it was kind of the same thing. You've got to have a partner, whether somewhere in your life, whether it's directly on the project or just kind of pushing you along, and that's going to be a huge tool to your success.
Man, I love Benny. I know you have limited time in your podcast, but I'd love to tell a quick story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mentioned our drummer Paul, and you mentioned Benny of the Gaslight Anthem. We were on tour in Europe for festival season, and Benny, we're good friends with the Gaslight Anthem guys, and Benny had to go home. I think there was a death in his family, actually. So he had to go home and wasn't going to be able to play this festival in Switzerland, this big festival called Greenfield, which the Foo Fighters were headlining. So it's a big festival, like maybe 30 or 40,000 people. So Gaslight Anthem, Brian and the guys said, okay, well, can we play acoustic or something, And the promoter said, you can play acoustic, but we're only going to give you half your money. So they're like, well, yeah, F that, So they asked our drummer Paul if he could learn Gaslight Anthem songs and play like the next day without like practicing or anything, just like listening to them. And Paul, being that he's a go-getter and highly like productive person, he figured it out. But what was really funny about the whole thing was, we're getting ready to watch our drummer play for Gaslight Anthem in front of a festival crowd of thousands of people. And guess who else walked over to the stage to check out Gaslight Anthem that day? Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins as well of the Foo Fighters just rolls over and Paul's like about to start playing when he looks over and he sees the drummer of Nirvana watching him play drums for a band that he doesn't know the songs. Like, doesn't that sound like a bad dream?
It's walking out with your pants down.
Exactly, right? And Benny came back and the next day and resumed the tour. But yeah, it was a really funny moment. And Dave was like, we were laughing, when Paul would not like forget a part, but be unsure, And so Dave was like, what are you guys like? What's going on? What are you guys laughing? And we're like, oh, okay, so that's not the drummer of the band. That's the drummer in our band. And he learned the songs this morning. And Dave was like, oh shit. It was a good time. And yeah, sorry to interject that story. But if people want to listen to my podcast, Lead Singer Syndrome, these are the stories I tell all the time on my show. So
is there anything else that outside of consistency that you think would be a good piece of advice for, someone starting out on a creative adventure?
Well, it really depends, what you're doing. I think that obviously, like, whether it's on the podcast side of things or the band side of things, like there are different ways that things are set up. I think, having your files and having your computer set up in a way that really makes sense is really underrated too. Not just like opening your computer and having like your files just all over your desktop. Like I see people sometimes, like, that's something that I have worked on over the years to really make sure, like, okay, I'm working on something. This is the like part of my computer, or this is the actual computer that I use for this task. I find has been really, really helpful. I think a calendar app that you like, maybe don't just use iCal or the Apple one. I use it's called Time Page. I absolutely love this app for scheduling, and it links up with Google and all that too. There's another app that some people use called OmniFocus that people are like, I know some highly productive people that use that. It's kind of like it's kind of like Notepad, iCal, and a to-do list all in one. It's a really, really good app as well. And I think like experimenting with that different stuff, I think is really, there's no reason to say like use the tools available to you, because for people like me, I'm very capable of forgetting a call like ours, Mike, today, which I didn't forget, by the way, but I'm very capable of that. So you got to play to your strengths, and even more so play to your weaknesses, and do what you can to stay on top of things. I think that's really key. If you're like me and you're not very organized, then use those tools.
Is there anything that you want to plug before we go?
Oh, all kinds of things. I mentioned my podcast, Lead Singer Syndrome, which I talk to other lead singers. That's a weekly podcast. I've had lots of great guests. I had Jeremy from A Day to Remember this week. I've had, Jacoby from Papa Roach, a lot of people in the rock world, but a lot of people in, in other types of music as well. If you're a lead singer, you can be on my show. And of course, my band Silverstein, we're releasing new music all the time. We have released 9 records, and we'll be coming to a venue near you this fall. And you're from Jersey. Shout out to all the homies in New Jersey. Starland Ballroom. That's a legendary room with some great memories. So can't wait to go back.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this with me, Shane.
Mike, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the Artist Work Ethic podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and please rate and review the show. Follow us on Instagram at The Artist's Work Ethic, and check out theartistsworkethic.com.